Well, congratulations! You've made it to the end of this course. You've gone through all the material, all 20 sections in the Gordon West Manual, a bunch of practice tests to get ready for the exam, and now you're ready to go and take the actual exam to get your technician class license. So I want you to know, in case you're nervous about the license test, don't be nervous. You're very, very prepared for this test. Let me give you some statistics. So over the course of this ham radio class, we've gone over 426 multiple choice questions, which are actual questions that could be on your test. 426. You've seen all of them. Some of them you've seen and answered more than once. So you're very prepared for the test. In fact, we've gone over every single multiple choice question that exists. Every question that you'll see on your technician class exam, you have already run into it on this course. So you are very prepared and you've worked very hard. So you're going to do great. And you've gone through practice tests which have simulated the real exam. So the next part at this point is to actually schedule to take the exam. And you'll probably do this at a ham radio club. So for this, I want you to read the last chapter, I believe it's chapter 5, not the last chapter, but read the section in the Gordon West Manual about getting your finding a test location. So I put the page numbers on the website, read the section in the manual, and then I did include a link to find an exam location on the class website. So you can click that in order to schedule a test date, or you can just follow the instructions in the Gordon West Manual. And after that, you should get your license. You'll go and you'll take the test, you'll fill out some forms, and after you take the test, they'll tell you almost immediately if you passed or failed. And if you pass, that's great, and then you just have to wait a few more days in order to receive your license. Alright, so after you get your license, the next step, obviously, is to pick a radio so that you can actually get on the air. So your first radio is probably going to be a handheld radio like this one. So if all you want to do is talk to people around where you live, sort of like use ham radio as a glorified walkie-talkie, then a $60 to $100 handheld radio will do. So a handheld radio, we've run into these. It looks like this. So you can actually get a brand new handheld radio for as low as $60. And these cheaper end radios are usually from companies based in China. However, they actually work quite well in my experience. This radio I bought from China for about $120, which the price has gone down now. And I've owned this for about 5 years. The only problem I had with it was because I did something stupid and I broke it. But other than that, it's a great radio, so I highly recommend it. And you might also be able to get a used handheld for even cheaper at an online swap meet. And what this is it's sort of the ham radio version of eBay. There's a website on a ham radio page, on a ham radio website set up where hams actually sell equipment to other hams that they don't need anymore, and you can buy equipment used from other hams. Or you can find a local ham radio club in your area and you can try to see if they have equipment that they can sell to you or give to you. And I've included a link so you can find the local ham radio club on my class website. In fact, I highly recommend that you get connected to a ham radio club. Especially as a new ham, you're going to need a lot of help to really get into the hobby. And the ham radio club is really pivotal for helping you get into the hobby of ham radio and learn how to do everything. You're going to be very happy too, especially if you're a youth taking this course, because ham radio, they want to make sure the hobby doesn't die, that youth are getting into ham radio to make sure that ham radio is passed on to the next generation. So especially when they see you in the ham radio club, interested in ham radio, they're going to be very happy and really want to help you out. So I highly recommend joining one of these clubs. But you probably didn't take all this course just so you can use a glorified walkie-talkie. So you probably want to get a more powerful radio eventually, maybe a VHF radio. So VHF radios are a little bigger and they allow you to talk to astronauts and bounce signals off the moon. And other than that, VHF radios allow you to do everything a handheld can do, except they have more power for longer distances. And then we have where it really gets fun, which is the HF radio, which is this radio here, big radio over here. So the HF radio is for if you want to bounce signals off the ionosphere and talk to people around the world. So the only thing is, as a technician class ham, you don't have a lot of privileges to operate on HF. So it might not be worth it to buy an HF radio unless either you learn Morse code, in which case you are allowed to operate Morse code on HF as a technician class licensee. Or if you want to use voice, then you're going to have to get a general class license, which is the next level up. I don't currently offer a general class license, but Gordon West does have a manual for that, so you can order it and try to study by yourself. Or again, look at your ham radio club. Sometimes they offer courses in order to help you get licensed. Anyway, if you do decide to buy an HF radio, you might want to buy it used if you're on a budget, because they can be a bit expensive if they're purchased brand new, $600 or $700. There's also an HF and VHF and UHF radio. So this incorporates all the features of all these radios. It can operate on HF and VHF and UHF. This is best if you're interested in features from both a VHF and an HF radio. And on the class website, I've put together a page where I have some recommendations for good radios you can buy. If you're not sure what radio you want to buy, I have some recommendations and some links to sort of get you started off, help you get started off, and help you make that decision of what radio to buy. So again, you have a few options for buying your radio. You can buy a new radio, which is expensive unless you buy one of these Chinese handhelds. Or you can buy a used radio, which you'll probably want to do unless you have a bunch of money sitting around. So again, check with your ham radio club. They might have some old gear you can use. Or if not, go to this website called qrz.com, and they have an online swap meet where you can buy ham radio equipment from other hams, and it's a lot cheaper than buying it new. So I've included a link to this swap meet website on the class website. So I actually put a lot of links on the website and a lot of helpful resources for you. So you can bookmark those. After you get your license, you can come back to them. Anyway, do some research on the radios you see there, and once you find a good radio, you can go ahead and buy that. And another option is also you can go to a ham fest. So ham radios every once in a while, ham radio operators once in a while have a ham fest, where it's basically a festival dedicated to ham radio. It's usually outside sometimes, and they'll have vendors will come, radio vendors, and they'll set up tables, and you'll be able to buy your equipment. If you go to the ham fest, you can buy equipment there. And sometimes these ham fests also offer used equipment. Hams are trying to sell their own equipment, and they set up their own tables. And either way, you can go and get yourself a good radio. So now that we've covered the radio part, we also need to cover the antenna part. So if you buy a handheld radio, the antenna comes with the handheld. If you buy anything else, you're either going to need to buy an antenna, or you can make an antenna. Now, especially for HF radios, one good option is to make your own dipole antenna. So if you remember from the antennas lesson, a dipole antenna is basically, it's a horizontal antenna that looks like a clothesline, but it's a ham radio antenna. And if you're low on funds and you're on a budget, this might be the best option. It's not that hard to build a dipole as long as you have help. So again, it would be definitely a good idea to ask your club to help you out with this if you do decide to make a dipole, because many club members have tons of experience making dipoles, and they can help you. They can definitely make it easier for you if you're setting one up. And I did include also a link to this on the class website as well. So if you want to make your own dipole, you'll find instructions over there. And then some radios also require a separate power supply in order to get the large amount of electricity they need to transmit. And this again must be bought separately from the radio. So again, do some researching, ask around at your club, and make sure that the power supply you get can deliver the amount of power your radio needs to work. So if you look at your radio's operating manual, it'll tell you what kind of power supply it needs. It might say it needs a 23 amp power supply. Then make sure the power supply you get can supply at least 23 amps. And then you're also going to need, I highly recommend that you get a band plan. So again, if you'll remember, a band plan is a chart that tells you where you're allowed to operate on the air, which is very important because as a technician class operator, you don't want to actually operate in somewhere where you're not supposed to. So I have also a link to a band plan on the class website from the ARRL, and that's very important, and you should definitely download that. And then finally, we're going to look at some ham radio lingo. So when you're operating on the air, hams have sort of developed these their own sort of language almost. They have different words that they say in ham radio. For example, they often say rig on ham radio, as in my rig maybe is a Yaesu FT450D. What does that mean? So in ham radio lingo, rig literally translates to radio. So if I say my rig is a Kenwood TS830S, that means my radio is a Kenwood radio model TS830S. And another thing you should know is the word handle. And the word handle literally translates to the word name in ham radio. For example, my name is Tobias, so I would say on ham radio, the handle here is Tobias. So that's what that means. And the best way really to learn how to do things on ham radio and get the feel for what you need to say and how you need to do things, just listen a lot. Okay, so when you get your ham radio license and you get your radio, just listen before getting on the air, and you're going to learn a lot that way. You'll learn how hams do things, how they conduct yourself on the air. Definitely listen a lot before making your first transmission. All right, now you're probably wondering how you can find other young people on ham radio, because not everyone on ham radio is a teenager like yourself, assuming you're a high schooler. So there are other youths on ham radio though, so I'm going to tell you how to find them. And one way is with what we call youth nets. And these youth nets are basically usually once a week, a bunch of young people meet on a repeater, and it's just a network. It's a group of hams meeting on a repeater once a week, a group of young hams. These are what we call youth nets. So there's a list of popular youth nets at arrl.org/youthnets, and I've included a link to that on the class website. And this site has a small list of the common youth nets that you can join to meet other young hams. And the Yacht Net, or the YACHT net, that's probably the most popular of all the youth nets listed there at the time of this recording. There's a link to that on the website as well. So there are two ways usually you can participate in ham radio youth nets. So option one, you can use your VHF or UHF radio because again, as I said, these youth nets are usually held on a repeater. So you can just use your radio to connect to the repeater. But the problem is there aren't very many of these youth nets. So for example, the yacht net is located in a repeater in Michigan. So the problem is if you don't live in Michigan, it's kind of hard to hit that repeater in Michigan using your radio because there's no way your radio signal is going to hit that far if you live, say, in New York. So then what do you do if there's no youth net in your area? Well, then we have a sort of little cheat, and it's a little trick. We can actually use the internet to connect to the repeater. You remember we talked about this a little earlier in the course. You can oftentimes, repeaters are connected to the internet, and using the internet, you can connect into the repeater and talk to people on that repeater. So in this way, you're not actually using ham radio, you're cheating with the internet, but at least you're meeting other hams. Because oftentimes these youth nets, such as the yacht net repeater is actually connected to the internet. So using a program on your computer called Echolink, you can actually talk and get into this youth net on the repeater using your computer's speakers and microphone. And again, it's cheating, but at least you're getting to meet other hams. And then there's also youth forums. So QRZ.com, that's a very popular ham radio website, has sort of a discussion group devoted to young hams. It's a youth forum, and you can use that also to connect with other young hams. And I also have a link to that on my ham radio page. In fact, I have a lot of resources on the radio page, on the class page. Another thing you can do is I have included a link so you can print out your own QSL cards, which are the postcards that you mail to people after you make contact with them. And one reason you might want to print these out is because it's cheaper than buying them. You can see all my QSL cards here again. And I've also included a link to a repeater directory, so once you've got your little handheld, you can figure out what the local repeaters are in your area and how to access them. And then finally, there's a very popular ham radio magazine called QST. It is like the ham radio magazine, and I highly recommend you get a subscription. It has a lot of interesting articles. And that's part of the ARRL, and in fact, I highly recommend you get a membership with the ARRL, which is probably the leading ham radio organization in the United States. So again, don't be overwhelmed by this. I have links on the class website under this section. Just bookmark the links for later. After you get your license and your radio, go through them and see what's useful. All right, so as I said, you're just about done with the course, and that's almost the last thing that I've had to tell you. But there's just one more thing before you're officially done with this course. So I need you to go onto the Lumen Learn site, onto the LMS after you finish this video, and go to the main page of the class website, and on the right, you'll see a button that says Complete Course. You need to press that button, Complete Course, because you're completing the course. You're done. If you don't press that button, then you're never officially done with the course. But since you've gone through the course, it's now time to press that button. Congratulations. You've graduated Tobias Park's Ham Radio Technician Class Licensing course. Anyway, I'm glad I was able to instruct you through this journey, and I hope I was helpful with my video lectures. So I'd really appreciate it if you leave me a review on Lumen Learn, and definitely send me an email at kd2eom@arrl.net after you pass your technician license. Let me know what your call sign is. And I wish you luck with all your endeavors. I wish you luck with all your schoolwork if you're in high school. And I hope to see you on the band soon.